And to love and to be loved is everything, and this is what our protagonist Soila yearned for from her mother. And as a young girl, she was overprotected and wanted nothing more than her mother's affection. And longing for independence and to escape her mother's expectations, she fled to New York City on a journey of self-discovery. Joining us now is the author of Lucky Girl, Irene Muchemi-Ndiritu. Irene, thank you so much for joining us, and good afternoon to you. Quite a riveting read, and something that one can resonate with, especially if you come from a very spiritual, religious family, and your upbringing is that you are monitored everywhere you go. There's certain extramurals or activities you weren't allowed to do as a young girl. What inspired the novel for you?
I guess it was inspired by just being an African woman who's lived overseas as an immigrant. I wanted to explore issues of what it means for family when you do not live at home, when you leave your home, and who do you become when you leave home and you're living away from your family, and how connected do you still remain to your family? And of course, Soila is an African woman, so she's an African girl. She's raised very traditional, very, very close to her mom and her aunties and all of that. And she has to go to America and she has to find her own identity. And I think that's what a lot of us are trying to do as we're getting older. So it's a coming of age story. It's a story about a woman who's growing up and trying to find who she is.
And she had to navigate this particular journey or rite of passage very delicately, in the sense that, as you're saying, the mother's overbearing, overprotective, and for good reason, considering what had happened to Soila's father, in terms of his suicide, dealing with bullying as well at school. It just has so many layers. Very, very rich story indeed, but also allows you to reflect on your own upbringing, as you're saying, the issues, things that are important to you, and how you can get out of a situation, albeit it's very difficult, to separate from family.
Exactly. And what choices you make. I've found with all the reviews that are coming in that the Asians and the Africans are relating more to this story because our family ties are so close, and the decisions that we make, even as we get older, even as we're adults, we're not able to really pull away from family. And Soila has to, she's so conflicted because at some point she needs to go home and take care of her ill mother. And she needs to go home and be with her, fix her mother's businesses, which are she's an only child. But on the other hand, she's got this love of her life in America and she's never been happier. And she has to decide, what do you do? And I think these are some very, very African issues because we are so tied to family. And it's something that we struggle with, whereas I think the Western world, people are able to sort of live independently of each other. I can love my mother and still have my own life. My mother doesn't really expect me to be with her when she's old and when she's ill. It's a different culture. So, I think those are the things that I was trying to explore: cultural issues, religion.
Sorry, Irene, in the interest of time, there's also the very glaring issue around gender-based violence and the people that you trust the most being the perpetrator. In this case, the family counselor or the pastor who Soila had consulted with or confided in regarding her desire to leave for New York City, him ending up violating her. I mean, that for me was an unexpected twist, but it's also very relevant because those are the things that we need to teach our children to be aware of.
Exactly. And I think that, as you know, being African, that these are issues that Africans are very private, and, there's a lot of family secrets, and, there's things like suicide and sex abuse and all of that. African families are very tight and tight-lipped, and everything is very sort of private family business, So I was trying to as well explore how, when you've grown up in that kind of family, how are you able to actually go and, find therapy, heal, because you're don't really have the space to even talk to your own parents about something like that. you know? So, yeah, so these are the kinds of things I think that I really wanted to explore.
Yeah, it's really a beautiful read, and it touches on all these facets of life that, as you're saying, sometimes we don't want to confront the communication gap between parents and children, what your aspirations are and what your parents' expectations are, and how you find the balance. But really appreciate it, Irene. Thank you indeed for your time. We're speaking to the author of Lucky Girl, Irene Muchemi-Ndiritu. The book is readily available, really, really a riveting read. If you want to share it with a friend or even young people, how they navigate communication challenges amongst different generation groups, young people and their parents. It really, really is quite an eye-opener.